Welcome to another edition of Aviation Consumer Live, part of the Fire Crown Oshkosh Live series here at the Blackhawk Aerospace exhibit with Edwin Black, no relation. Edwin, we got lucky here. It's been a rainy morning at AirVenture, but just before our segment, it cleared up.
I'm thrilled to be here, and that's the fun of Oshkosh. You never know what the weather's going to do. So we're fortunate to get a little bit of blue sky here this morning at Oshkosh, and thanks for having me. We're really happy to be here.
Glad to do it. And, we're standing in front of a legacy Pilatus PC-12. What a pretty interesting paint job. And over on the other side, there's a legacy TBM 700. And, that's a good segue to talk about what Blackhawk has built here in the industry. There's a lot of legacy turboprops running around with original engines. And you can talk about the specifics, but Blackhawk has made a good business of retrofitting older turboprops with higher powered engines. It doesn't matter what you fly, you always want to go faster, you always want to climb better, and you always want more efficiency and performance. That's exactly what you get with a Blackhawk conversion. Take it from the top. How'd you get into the business, and what do you bring to the table to the legacy turboprop market? Everything from legacy PC-12s and TBM 700s to King Airs, Conquests, and everything in between.
There's one thing that we've found when you're dealing with aircraft, and that there's no substitute for horsepower. And so we've had a lot of owners and operators over the years come up to us and say, hey, we love this airplane. We're coming up on an overhaul event. Is there any way you could put a bigger engine to make it go a little bit faster, make it climb a little bit more efficiently and better as well? So back in 1999, we started with the Conquest 1, the 425, where we took off the old Pratt & Whitney -114A engines and put on the Pratt & Whitney -135A engines. And since then, we've just expanded out to multiple other platforms. So the 425 was our first platform. We moved into the King Air series, starting with the 90, moving into the 200s, into the 300 and 350 series. We've expanded out to the PC-12, partnering with Finoff Aviation as well on that. And the advantage to it really is that you take an older legacy aircraft and bring it up to the new factory standards. So for example, on this aircraft here, your serial number is between 1 and 850 or so. You take the old engine off, it's a 67 Bravo engine. You put the 67 Papa engine on, which is the same engine model that they were installing on the PC-12 NG. So you're really leveling up the old legacy airplanes to the next level. And as you know, we were talking earlier, Pilatus today, they're offering the PC-12 Pro, which has an even bigger and more efficient engine on it than this. And so that's one of the niches that Blackhawk does, is we go back to the old legacy airplanes and bring them up to that next level of performance, rather than just overhauling the engine and continuing at those same performance levels that they were originally certified, sometimes 30, 40, and even 50 years ago on some of the King Airs that we do.
Yeah, the fleet's definitely getting older. And let's talk more about specifics about how you chi-chi more performance out of these engine upgrades. Now, backstop me here. You got a higher shaft horsepower engine, but it's still derated for airframe limitations.
Right.
But the advantage is you could carry that horsepower up to a higher altitude, where the older engines may start to slow down, right?
That's exactly right. So what we've found is we always want to stick with the original airframe certified horsepower limit. And so what we'll do is we'll take a higher powered engine and then flat rate it. So, for example, on the King Air 350, for example, we'll take the 67 Alpha engine, which is a 1200 shaft horsepower engine, and we'll flat rate it down to 1050 shaft horsepower, which is what the airframe limitation is. And so what that allows you to do is pull that horsepower to a much higher altitude, so you can climb faster. And then once you're up at that altitude, you enjoy pulling more torque, which of course is more speed. So on the King Air 350 series, you'll see a 30 knot speed increase by installing the bigger 67 alphas on it. So the pilots get to enjoy, not only that climb, you get up and above, through the weather a little bit faster, and then once you're there, you set in and cruise 30 knots faster. And who doesn't want to go faster, right? That's why you have these airplanes. Everybody wants to enjoy that speed, and that's what we do here at Blackhawk.
Yeah, let's sort of go through the product line, or at least the retrofit line. Now, these are STC applications. So let's take a little walk back in time where maybe let's start with a Viper Cheyenne 1 or 2 or something, okay, with stock engines. What's the performance look like on an older Cheyenne, and then throw some Blackhawk PT6s on it? What's it look like?
Yeah, so we've got an STC, and Blackhawk has roughly 40 total STCs now, and they're mostly engine centric. So oftentimes we'll have to get an STC for some gauges or for some propellers or things of that nature. But on the Cheyenne series, we've got an STC that'll allow us to put the 135A engines on, and we exclusively work with Pratt & Whitney, so it's the PT6 family line. So we'll put the 135As on the Cheyenne 1, the Cheyenne 2, or the Cheyenne 2XL. And so depending on your airframe model, you'll see some different performance variants of that. But if you put a 135A on the Cheyenne 1, for example, you're gonna rocket up into your, up to the flight levels where you're gonna cruise, almost 25 knots faster in a Cheyenne 1. So it's a phenomenal program. And then the Cheyenne 2, of course, had a bigger engine on it. So you'll still see a gain, just not quite as much as you would on the Cheyenne 1. And of course, the Cheyenne 2XL had a straight 135 engine on it, but you'll still see more efficiencies in the Alpha engine, where you're still 15 knots faster in the Cheyenne 2XL. And that's a model, and we found this a lot with some of these older aircraft. There's almost like a cult of following where people love the Cheyenne series. They love the 425 series. And so they'll put the money into it because they know they're going to fly it for a long time. Versus overhauling, there's just not as much value in flying at the same speeds, whereas you can dash up your engine and gain that extra horsepower and efficiency.
Yeah, we'll talk about refurbs because I think it's a worthy topic before we close. But let's move down the line in twin turboprops. Another popular twin turboprop, Cessna Conquest. What's that look like with these engines?
Yeah, so the Cessna Conquest, what we do on that is we'll take off the old 112 engines, which are a 450 shaft horsepower engine, and put the 135As on, which are a 750 shaft horsepower engine. So again, we'll flat rate it down to that, to that 450 limit. And what we do is we'll lower the torque limit so that you're not exceeding the airframe horsepower limitation. And you're going to see, 285 knots true airspeed in a Conquest 1, which is phenomenal. Most people are going to be cruising, closer to the 260 knot range, somewhere in that ballpark. So you can see the value of putting the bigger engines on. And that's the other part of it, is the economics have to make sense as well. Where if you look at what an overhaul would cost versus putting a new engine on, can you justify that difference? And when you look at how much time you'll save on the airframe, the lower operating cost of having a 0 time, 0 cycle new engine with the warranty and all that, the economics really balance out. And then the other thing we always like to tell people is when you go to sell the aircraft, you still have a newer engine on in its place. And so you're going to see that value come back upon resale as well. So it's really a win-win on both fronts, both performance-wise and economic-wise. Yeah,
let's talk about propellers. Start with this one behind us. This is a Legacy PC-12. Say again what variant PT6 is on this one.
Yeah, so this engine, it's a PT6A-67 Papa engine. So it's the same engine that was installed on the PC-12 NG. And what we've got here with the propeller is we've worked hand in hand with MT Propeller in Germany to develop a 7-blade propeller option. So the factory model is a Hartzell 4-bladed propeller, and MT also has a 5-bladed option that you can install on this as well. But the value of using a 7-blade propeller is that you can shorten the diameter a little bit, which reduces the noise characteristics. And so a lot of people really like putting the 7-blade propeller on because the cabin gets a lot quieter, which is very comfortable for the passengers. The cockpit's a lot quieter as well. and you'll see a tremendous increase in climb performance as well with this propeller. So, if you're bumping around or climbing through some inclement weather, things of that nature, it's really advantageous to get up and above it as quick as you can, and that's what this 7-blade propeller allows you to do.
Well, before we walk away from the PC-12, any version of the PC-12 has got a lot of respect for what it does.
Yeah.
So this was a early gen PC-12, and now obviously wearing some upgrades, including this propeller and engine upgrade. What performance differences do we have now compared to what it had when it came off the Pilatus line way back in the day?
Great, thanks for that. So on the PC-12, it has the original engine is the 67 Bravo, and so we're dashing it up to the 67 Papa. So there's not a tremendous amount of difference between the engines and the performance, but you'll see about a 15, 16 knot speed increase from going from the Bravo model up to the Papa model. So you'll get some performance, and then of course the climb performance is incredibly improved as well. But on this one, it's really about economics as well. So if you're going to overhaul the old 67 Bravo engine, your price points are going to be right in line with what a brand new 67 Papa would be. So to that point, we have a backlog on these engines right now into 2026. So there's tremendous demand where people would much rather prefer to put a brand new, bigger engine on for a comparable price point to what they would overhaul their old 67B for.
Yeah, so if you're talking about delivery times, it's probably a good time to talk about supply chain. And when you and I got together a few months ago, we were talking about tariffs, and you were concerned about pricing. What are you seeing as far as delivery times on these PT6s? It's a pretty lively market, isn't it?
It is. It's when you look at across the market, general aviation has seen an increase in activity, since the COVID years. People want to fly private, and so whether it's a PC-12 or a King Air or a TBM series, you're seeing a lot of people gravitate towards private aviation. And so what that has caused, it's like the perfect storm where Pratt & Whitney and all of their suppliers have really been backlogged trying to get the parts out. So we'll purchase, more than 130 engines from Pratt & Whitney this year, and we do have some supply constraints. Where on the PC-12, for example, our 2025 order is for 30 engines from Pratt & Whitney, and all of those are sold. Our next year's order is for 36 engines, and most of those are sold as well. So we're doing really, really well. And one of the exciting things we announced this week at Oshkosh is that we just celebrated our 2,000th engine delivery from Pratt & Whitney. So over the course of 25 years that Blackhawk's been upgrading these aircraft, we've now sold more than 2,000 engines from Pratt & Whitney. So we've been a tremendous partner for Pratt & Whitney. We're the largest non-OEM buyer of Pratt & Whitney PT6 engines, and so they give us that OEM status. But yeah, it's a issue that we're seeing right now is the supply chain. So one of the things we tell people is, you used to be able to just call us up and within a month or two, we could get you some engines. You need to plan much more further down the road. 6 months to a year is really good to plan so that you don't have any unnecessary downtime. And the flip side of that too is if you went to overhaul your engine, you're seeing really long lead times in that department as well due to some of these supply chain issues. So it's not just on the new engine delivery side of things, it's on the overhaul side of things as well. So that's a challenge that Pratt & Whitney's really stepping up to try to resolve, and hopefully here in the next year or two we can see some resolution to the supply chain issues. And one other point you mentioned is on the tariffs. Fortunately, all of the PT6s are covered under the USMCA agreement, which is still in effect, and so there's no tariffs on brand new PT6A engine sales, and so that's been a huge benefit for us. Where we were quite nervous when we spoke last
that
time.
was sort of the unknown a few months ago.
There was a lot of uncertainty to that, but fortunately we've been able to work through that to where there are no tariffs on new engine sales right now from Pratt & Whitney.
What I want to talk about next is refurbs, right?
Yeah.
And as you say, the Pilatus PC-12 or a Conquest or whatever it might be is a good airplane for a lot of operators.
Yeah.
And if you find an airplane that it's good, it's maintained well, it, it may be a good airplane to do a total refurb.
Yeah.
Start with the engine, paint. Let's talk about the Blackhawk dealer network and some of the other stuff that you guys do refurb-wise. There's avionics, a bunch of other stuff too, right?
It is, and so in fact, when we walk over to look at the TBM here in a moment, we have a TBM 700 series on display. It's a 2004 model, and we completely refurbished that with our partners, Avex Aviation. They put a brand new paint job on it, brand new interior, brand new glass panel. It's got the Garmin 600, 750 TXIs in it for the panel. And then of course we put the bigger engine on it. It's got the 66D variant engine that's installed on it, which is really completes that airplane. So you're taking the 700 series. You want to walk over to it?
Yeah, let's go do it. We've got a tractor coming over.
Yeah.
So let's,
See, that's the joy of Oshkosh, right? You get all kinds of vehicles.
while we're walking, let's get a look at this paint job.
Yeah.
Pretty unique. You won't see another one like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I already talked to Steve Cook about it. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll walk right over here. This is perfect. So this is the TBM 700 series that we were talking about, where you can completely refurbish an airplane. Where this is a 2004 model. It has about 2,000 total hours on it, and they stripped the paint completely, put all the interior, like we mentioned earlier, new panel, and then the engine. So essentially what we're doing is you're taking a 700 series TBM and escalating it up to the same performance levels as a TBM 850 series. So there's a neat little button, we call it the 850 XP mode. So as soon as you take off, you're going to take off with 700 shaft horsepower. There's a button that you can push which activates 850 shaft horsepower for climb and for cruise, which is exactly how the 850 model is. You take off at 700 shaft horsepower. As soon as you lift off, you can escalate it to 850 shaft horsepower. So Daher, they had a really neat way of delivering more horsepower for their customers.
Yeah, you mentioned avionics upgrades and Garmin systems in general, and Garmin's got the EIS engine system.
Yeah.
Compare the avionics now to where they were when you folks first started. How's it easier to operate the engines on these things? Because they're not FADEC. You do have to be careful about over torquing and all that, but how does an EIS system, part of an avionics upgrade, make it easier to operate?
Well, and that's a great question as well, because it does become a lot easier. There's a lot less workload when you improve the avionics on the airplanes. And so whenever we put new engines on, you're also going to change some of the engine gauge parameters. So we've got to work with partners like Garmin to make sure that we put the correct markings on it. And to your point, the pilot, they have enough workload going on, and so the EIS systems, they've got really neat, warning systems. You'll see some flashing and things of that nature. If a pilot's doing something they shouldn't be doing, it'll start to talk to you. So it's a very efficient way to help reduce some of the pilot workload, where they can quickly and easily monitor what the engine's doing, and then make sure they don't exceed any of the engine limitations.
Yeah. Let's talk about the dealer network. So if you've got a TBM or Pilatus or any of the other aircraft that fall under the STC, who does the work? Let's talk about service centers.
Yeah, perfect. And so that depends greatly on which aircraft model you're working with. So for the TBM, for example, one of our sister companies, Avex Aviation, they have, they'll do new aircraft sales, and they'll maintain aircraft as well. They've got a whole MRO network. One of our facilities is in Camarillo, the other one's in Broomfield, Colorado. And so with this airplane, we completely refurbished it at the Camarillo Center, where they put the glass panel in, paint interior and all of that over there. So it's really helpful to have that factory owned or factory detail in the service center network. And then when you expand outside of that to, say, the King Air fleet, we've got a network of over 80 distributors across the globe that sell, support, and maintain the different engine upgrades. And the nice thing about what we do is that the engines, they're Pratt & Whitney engines, so they fall within the same maintenance criteria as the Pratt & Whitney protocol. So any of our authorized distributors can maintain those engines in accordance with the Pratt & Whitney standards. And then we also have some Blackhawk owned factory service centers. They're called Blackhawk Performance Centers. There's one in Columbia, Missouri, one in Colorado, one in Glendale, Arizona as well, just as an effort to help customers, maintain their aircraft and have a place to go where they can get all of these upgrades at a really valuable price point as well.
Yeah, if we're talking about price, I know it's tough to really put a hard number on it, but I'm thinking resale, right?
Yeah.
Which is still a pretty lively market. So you take a TBM or Pilatus or something that's got stock engines. What kind of increase in value in general would you see with a Blackhawk converted engine?
Yeah, so generally speaking, you're going to see the same value that you put into the aircraft from an engine perspective. You're going to see that same value return. And so most people don't put an engine on just to turn and sell it. They want to fly it, and then maybe 5 or 6 years down the road they'll sell it. And so what we found is almost 100% of the airplanes that we've upgraded within a 500-hour window sell the airplane for 100% of the value that they put into the engines. And so it's almost like thinking of it that if you remodel your house, if you put the money into the kitchen, that's going to give you the best resale value on it. And an engine's a lot like the kitchen of an airplane, where you're going to get the most resale value out of an engine. And so, for example, this airplane, which is for sale, by the way, so it's like I said, a 2004 model with 2,000 total time on it, and we're offering it to the market for $2.4 million with a run-out -64 engine on it. You're going to see the aircraft price be in that low $1 million range. So you put the engines on, the paint, the interior, the panel, and you're going to be up somewhere in that $2.4 million range. Versus the alternate option is you could go buy an 850, and so you got to kind of look at what the values of an 850 are. And so if you had an 850 with a freshly overhauled engine, you're probably going to be close to that $3 million price point. So you can see by refurbishing a 700 series and picking it up for say $2.4 million, you're going to save some money and extract some value out of that proposition.
It would occur to me that with delivery delays on new airplanes, for a lot of operators, it may make sense to do a refurb or a re-engine on their existing airplane.
Yeah.
Is that still going on? I know that some of the OEMs tell me that the lead times are starting to come down.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the economy, but what's the typical logic for the average operator of these turboprops?
Yeah, and that's something we've seen a lot of, where if you can't get a brand new airplane, the next best option, of course, is to just build your own and refurbish your own. So if you were looking at a lead time on a new aircraft of somewhere between 1.5 years to 2 years, you can go buy an older aircraft. When you get the paint and the interior, the avionics engines put on it, you're probably in a 1 to 2 month time frame to get all of that completed. So you can quickly get back up operational by refurbishing the aircraft. And a lot of people, they like to do that as well, because they want to put their own paint scheme on it. So if you look at this state storage airplane, for example, it's a gorgeous paint scheme that you're just not going to get that same option from the factory. And so a lot of people like to customize it and build it how they want it. And that's one of the advantages of doing that, is you can get it quicker, you can get it for less, and you get the same utility that you would see out of a brand new aircraft.
What's the PC-12 market looking like? Legacy airplanes, and these airplanes have been around for a while now. There's been several iterations of these things.
It's a workhorse aircraft.
Yeah.
It is very strong. It's hard to come by. A low time PC-12 right now. It's a very strong market, and as also if you went to buy a brand new PC-12 Pro, you're going to have a long lead time on that as well. And that just speaks to the value of the airplane, how people use it and how they operate with it. There's a tremendous value for that. And that holds true for King Airs as well. Like if you went to buy a King Air 350, right now there's a really long lead time. And so you can do that same process where you can refurbish a 350, get it in service a lot quicker than you would, say a brand new 360i.
How about downtime on a shop floor for let's start with just a basic engine swap?
Yeah, so if you had a Legacy 700 TBM and you wanted to do the engine upgrade, you're looking at a 3-week downtime. 3 total weeks to do the engine upgrade. If you did some maintenance or you did some avionics with it, it could go up a little bit, but that's a pretty good time frame to allocate towards an engine upgrade. And that's pretty similar on the PC-12. It's similar on the King Airs as well. You can probably do the King Airs a little bit quicker, and that's one of the reasons why we like to advocate for our performance centers, is that if you have a shop that does this regularly, you can get them done a little bit quicker than if it's somebody doing it for their first or
Yeah,
second
they're
time.
pretty efficient getting them done. And how about doing engine and avionics at the same time? Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah.
So pull the engine out, and while it's on the shop floor, do a suite of avionics.
We do see that a lot, and the advantage to that again is that you're doing two at the same time, and they don't interfere with each other. So if you're up in the panel, you're not slowing yourself down by working out on the engines, and so you'll get a lot of shops that will couple those together. And to do a G1000 upgrade, you're probably looking at a 3 to 4 week period. So you couple that with the engines, and now you're really minimizing that downtime and maximizing the effectiveness of the aircraft.
Yeah, we've covered the G1000 upgrade for the King Air series, which also includes the Autoland now.
Yeah.
So are you seeing more of those upgrades?
We are. In fact, I believe Garmin just approved the Autoland, or if it's not approved, we'll have to check in with them if they're announcing it at the show. They're approving it for the King Air 350 series as well. They've had the King Air 200 series approved for a long time, and they've gotten such tremendous results from that as well. There are a lot of people that love that Autoland feature, and so they're expanding that onto the King Air 350 series, which the customers have really been, really pressing Garmin to expand that to other models as well. So yeah, that's a very good system that we highly advocate for, and that's why it's fun to come to Oshkosh, is you get to see what's new, what's being innovated, and how can I improve my flying experience. And a lot of pilots really like that, and their spouses really like that Autoland feature a lot.
Yeah, it's a good sell. On yesterday's show, we did a segment on the new PC-12 Pro. And one thing I didn't realize is that airplane's got the G3000 Prime,
Yeah.
but it also has Autoland.
Yeah.
So do you see, you sort of live this stuff every day. You see more Autoland retrofits coming in the future?
I do. I think especially.
And how does it fit in the turbine market? When I first flew the Autoland 6 years ago, it was in a Piper M600 turboprop. And, a lot of people said, well, in a turbine airplane, a lot of times, there's more safety built in because you got more reliable turbine engine. Maybe some of these airplanes are crude, but talking to you, it kind of seems like the Autoland is a good sell for a turbine airplane now.
It is. I just think it's a natural fit when you have a system that's innovative, that is that innovative, that you're going to see it expand to other models. The challenge is, Garmin is so busy doing all of these other things. How do you extract their engineering effort, and then what models do you start to look for? And I know Garmin's looking to expand onto the PC-12 panel a little bit more as well. And by doing that, that's when you're going to see that the expedition of the Autoland from Garmin and some other groups as well that are putting it together as well. But yeah, I really think, though, you're going to see more and more Autoland systems being installed in some legacy aircraft, because it's really easy to build it into the airframe when it's new. It's a little bit harder to retrofit some of these Autoland systems, but Garmin's got a great team. There's some other groups that are working on them as well that really are leading that charge to make it a safer and more reliable experience for pilots.
Well, we covered a lot. What else did we talk about?
Well, we've got some other programs that we've been working on.
Yeah, what's in the future? What are you guys working on?
We're working on expanding some propeller eligibilities on some of our engine upgrade STCs. One of them is on the King Air 350, where we've been installing a Hartzell 5-bladed propeller as an option for the King Air 350 with our bigger 67A engines. We've also got the MT 5-bladed, and the MT 7-bladed propeller is now approved on the King Air 350 series with the bigger 67A engine. So that's something that we're really looking closely on. And then we're also trying to expand, in looking at some other systems on airplanes, some airframe systems as well, because we really have been engine centric in the past. That's kind of been our bread and butter at Blackhawk, is beefing up some of these the horsepower on these older legacy aircraft. And that's, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's no substitute for horsepower.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about coming to shows like Oshkosh is we'll get customers that come in and they'll tell you, why didn't you tell me to do this earlier? I mean, if you just would have told me that it climbed faster and that it went this much faster, I would have done it earlier. And I said, well, that's what we did. That's why we're here, and that's what we're trying to advocate for, is to show people what they can expect when they put these bigger engines on their airplanes.
What challenges do you have working on these airplanes?
Well, I think some of our, like you mentioned earlier, some of our biggest challenges are supply chain. So there, as more and more of these engine upgrades get put into the market, you get a lot more demand. And so we're trying to keep up with that demand and working really closely with our partners at Pratt & Whitney to make sure we can fill the demand. And they're having a lot of issues right now with supply chain as well. So for us, that's been one of our biggest challenges is how do we get the engine mix blend right? So for example, the PC-12, we've got a backlog for, almost a year right now. And then on some of our other models, we don't. And so when we put our orders in with Pratt, how do you really get that blend? How can you predict the future, Larry? And that's, if you can tell me that, that would be very helpful for us as well.
Yeah, how about the STC process? Is it about the same as it was, more difficult? Is it easier?
It's so we've got
describe the regulatory climate these days.
Yeah, so there are some changes that have happened here, over the last couple of years or so, but for the most part, and that's something that Blackhawk's very good at, is we've got straight line thinking when it comes to engineering, and it's all about the plan. When you put together your STC plan, you really want to make sure you can be as efficient as possible, but then of course meet all the FARs, and that's the one thing in the STC world. It's really driven by the FAA, and we've got a great relationship with them. It might take a little longer to get STCs than it has in the past, but for good reason, right? People are flying, you're leaving the ground, you want to make sure that you're safe, and that's our primary objective, is safety above everything. And so, we've got a really good cadence with STCs. We generally will turn out an STC every year, one major new STC every year. And we see that for the foreseeable future, where we're going to be generating, one major engine-based STC each year. But it is. You got to have a great relationship with the FAA, which we do, and then you got to have that knowledge and experience to get it done without going down all these rabbit holes that take a lot more time and cost a lot more to get them done.
How about turbine upgrades for piston airplanes? Over the years, we've seen some modifiers put turbine engines in pistons. Cessna 210 is one. There's been some on the A36 Bonanza.
Yeah.
There's been some on the, I think the Baron.
Yeah.
Is there a market there?
There is. We've worked with, there have been some very successful groups that have done that in the past. We don't have any engine upgrades today that replace a piston for a turbine, but that is something that we have been eyeballing and looking to do as we're kind of getting thin on the turboprop markets as far as what new models we can work on.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah. What haven't you tapped?
So, there's a couple models, like there's a King Air 100, and there's some older ones that you probably just don't have
those old 100s with those old Garretts.
The old Garretts. We looked at a couple of those options, but just the economics are a little bit harder on that. And so clearly, when you're developing an STC, you want to have a large market so that you can recuperate, a lot of the engineering efforts that you're putting forth. And so it's harder to find those turboprop markets that we haven't already engaged with. And so we are expanding to look to do things on, piston to turbine, and some other options as well, maybe with some of these, fuel mandates that are coming down the pipelines. We're really eyeballing that really closely to see if there's something we can do, even outside of the turbine market, to really make a difference for aviation and particularly in the power plant world.
Yeah, could you do a quick price comparison between a typical overhaul on an original PT6 to a Blackhawk engine?
You got it. So, and that again, it depends. There's a lot of options there, whether it's a first run or second run, and there's a lot of different variations there. But just as a rule of thumb, like on the PC-12 that we've been talking about, most people are going to budget somewhere in the $1 million for a 67 Bravo overhaul, versus the new engine is going to cost just a little bit above that. So that's kind of your comparison there. But then you get on like the old King Air 90s, where you've got an old 21 engine, and you can overhaul both 21 engines for somewhere in the $600,000 to $700,000 range, versus putting the new 135As on, which is just north of $1 million. So you've got a little bit more of a price delta there. But the thing that sells it at that point is the performance, right? When you put the 135As on the King Air 90, it's a whole nother animal, and that's what people are really looking for. There's a reason you own an airplane, and putting more horsepower on it just gives you one more reason to own it.
How about savings in fuel burn?
Yeah, and that's another big advantage as well. So it depends on how you want to operate it. If you want to fly fast, you're going to use more fuel, but the good news is you're going to arrive to your destination earlier, so your block fuel time either stays the same or even can come down depending on how you fly it. But most people, if you had a long range mission that you wanted to go on, you could throttle it back and easily extend your range, lower your fuel consumption numbers. Most people, they're going to take advantage of that power, and they're going to fly max cruise power settings, and so their fuel flow goes up. So for example, on the King Air 90, your fuel flow, instead of being around 80 gallons per hour, it'll be closer to 90 gallons per hour. So 10 gallons per hour more, but you're going 25 knots faster. So over the course of the trip, your fuel flow or your fuel use is very similar, very comparable to the old engines. And that's another big thing, is one of the big savings is you're putting less time on the airframe and the systems, and that's how you can really save money. Is you're flying less time, which is going to save you on some of your time-based inspections and things of that
so
nature.
what are some of the time intervals? Take this PT6 that's on this DBM. What's the hot section?
Yeah, so the hot section on this is the 66 Delta. It's an 1,800 hour hot section with a 3,600 hour overhaul.
Okay. Anything else we didn't cover?
I think that's pretty good. I mean, we've been coming to Oshkosh now for the past 20 plus years. This is my 18th year at Oshkosh, and I'll tell you, it's just a wonderful experience to see the history of aviation on full display. Anytime you look in the sky, you'll see something from the past, you'll see what's going on today, and then even a snapshot of what's to come. And so that's why I think we really are excited to be here at Oshkosh, and really appreciate you showcasing what we're doing here for all of our customers.
Well, I think it's a good market, and like I said, the used turboprop market has always been strong, and I think it's probably stronger now than ever. Look into your crystal ball. What do you see for engine tech in the next, say, 10 years? Throw a curveball at him.
Yeah,
he's got all the answers.
That's a good one. So I know you're seeing a lot of talk about, there's some different engine models that are coming online. You've got GE's developing that catalyst engine for the Denali aircraft over at Textron. So we're really monitoring that very closely to see if there's any way that you could put that on a retro market. We love working with Pratt & Whitney, and they've got some new engine models that they're working on. I know you'll see some of these new FADEC or EPEC engines that are coming out for the TBMs on the 960 series, and then also on the PC-12 on the Pros that are coming out right now. And so
easier engine operation yet.
It's a phenomenal engine. The challenge is retrofitting some of these is a lot more tricky, because you have to have full integration with avionics and systems, and it's a whole different animal compared to some of the hydromechanical PT6s that we've been working on for years. So, but we're excited to look in those areas, and we'll see what comes about with that.
Yeah. Well, we'll turn it back to the studio, and I love talking to Edwin Black because I love talking about turbines. And you've been watching Aviation Consumer Live, part of the Fire Crown Oshkosh Live series. We'll be reporting here every day, I think, to the end of the week. And for Aviation Consumer, I'm Larry Anglisano. Thanks for watching.